Welcome everyone to our last session of the Teach Access Student Academy 2026 edition. I am Rolando Mendez. I'm Director of Education here at Teach Access, and I am joined by the lovely Kate Sanka, our Executive Director, for this last conversation and fireside chat. But before we start, just a few reminders. As always, we're committed to making this and all of our events as accessible as possible. So, reminder that you can turn on captions using the CC button in your Zoom toolbar, which is usually located at the bottom of your screen. There's also American Sign Language or ASL interpretation, and it is highlighted or spotlighted for everyone. So they're front and center. And if you need additional support, you can send us a message via the chat. This is a big event, and although this is our last session, there are multiple ways to engage. Even when you receive the recordings, you can participate in the chat when it's available. When you see the recording, you can leave us a comment in the channel. You can ask questions using the Q&A feature on Zoom. You can take notes or don't take notes at all. Quiet listening counts too. We're going through a lot of information, and sometimes it takes a while to kind of like sink in and make sense of it. So that's okay. You can always reach out to us and step away, stretch, or take breaks if you need. Go grab your coffee, go grab your tea or your water, and let's just get ready for this conversation. But before that, I want to thank our project team members. These wonderful people helped us for the last couple of months put this great event together. So shout outs to Diana, Ian, Ruth, Jennifer, and our fabulous interns, Lexi and Sherry. And also, thank you to our sponsors whose support has made possible providing you this event at no cost. So thank you, Microsoft, ADP, Google, Meta, Salesforce, and Skyscanner. And with that out of the way, I am going to add my fellow colleagues to the spotlight so we can start introducing themselves and yeah. Perfect. One more. Okay. So today we have here with us three wonderful people and accessibility and professionals in different fields that we admire, and we have collaborated in various projects. First, we have Meena Das. She's a software engineer at GitHub. And Meena Das is a software engineer at GitHub working on building accessible front-end experience. Through her accessibility expertise, she has advised several individuals and organizations on how to make their products accessible to people with disabilities. She's the founder of Working with Disabilities Support Group for Working Professionals with Disabilities, which has over 3,000 members on social media. In addition to serving on the Teach Access board, she's also a member of the Accessibility Leadership Committee and the Next Gen Council of a nonprofit organization named Disability In, and has been featured by the Times of India, ABC News, CNET, Forbes, and Tech Times for her views on disability inclusion in tech. You can follow her on Instagram, where she shares accessibility tidbits and experience from her personal life. We also have Nandita Gupta, who is a TEDx speaker and senior product manager, AI and accessibility at Cisco, where she leads accessibility for WebEx. With over 10 years of industry experiences, Nandita holds a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering and a master's degree in human-computer interaction. She was named at Thor in Tech 2024 and recognized as Faces of Inclusive Excellence and Diversity Champion of 2020. Nandita serves on various boards, including Lime Connect, and was inducted into the Susan M. Daniels Disability Mentoring Hall of Fame. She has been an invited speaker at major conferences globally, including UX Talks Tokyo, Grace Hopper Celebration, World Information Architecture I'm Enabling, and many more. Last but not least, Tiara McKenzie. She's ADA's Compliance Unit Manager at Michigan Department of Civil Rights. She serves as a member of the executive team at the MDCR and manages the ADA Compliance Unit. In her role, Tiara is charged with ensuring accessibility and inclusion of people with disabilities in all programs, services, activities, hiring, and recruitment. Additionally, Tiara provides leadership and guidance to the state of Michigan's network of Title II ADA coordinators to promote compliance with state and federal disability right laws. With a passion for public speaking, Tiara regularly develops and hosts public forums to educate the community on disability rights and compliance, garnering the interest of hundreds of attendees each session. With that, I'll start the conversation, or I'll set up us with this question. We've read the bios, and we've known a little bit of what you've done, kind of like a high overview of your accomplishments. But we would like for the audience to know a little bit more about yourself, some details about that you would like to share with the audience. You want to go first, Meena?
Yes. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. First of all, thank you so much for having me here. I love doing stuff with Teach Access. So thank you. Yeah, so I'll just share a little bit. I am a software engineer at GitHub. I joined just 2 months ago from Microsoft. Um, yeah, I'm excited to share how accessibility can be made a part of your daily job, or rather than just like having a specialized accessibility job. Because I remember when I was graduating from college, my master's thesis was in the accessibility space, and I was trying so hard to get a fully uh, uh, like a full accessibility role, but I didn't find anything. I was so sad that I would have to stop doing accessibility work, and like I could no longer make a real impact, but like that is not true. Uh, Accessibility is e- 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 uh, everybody's responsibility. So no matter what your job is, you can find ways to apply that to your job. So yeah, I'm excited to share more about that.
Thank you, Meena. And we're excited to learn from you. We know that you've done very interesting things in your role at GitHub and Microsoft, but also outside part of the advocacy work that you do. Nandita, you're next.
Happy to go next. Hello, everyone. My name is Nandita Gupta. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a petite Indian woman with long black hair and wearing electric blue glasses today. And I work as a senior product manager here at Cisco at the intersection of AI, enterprise AI, and accessibility. Before I really introduce myself, I'd like to take you back to my grandfather. So, my grandfather was a retired professor, brilliant, really amazing, loved his books, loved lecturing his grandchildren about his books as well. So, things, he learned, we learned as well. Um, and one day everything changed. So, I've watched him lose his eyesight. And as a kid, I didn't have vocabulary for, what I was really witnessing, but I felt it deeply. I watched as the world became harder for him, the small things like, being able to be independent, going on his walks, gardening, reading his books, everything just shut out. And that was my introduction to accessibility, honestly. Just seeing the lack of it in a world that just wasn't designed for him. So that feeling stuck with me, but I didn't know this field even existed. I didn't know that I could go do something like this. All I knew was, okay, what can I do to build a better world for people like him? So now we fast forward, a few years. I graduated with an electrical engineering degree with a focus in robotics. I was like, yeah, I'm going to build these robots that, can go fetch the mail or help people with independent living, right? And then everything shifted. I found my own disability, later in life. I suffer with asthma, but I also have ADHD. So I am an Indian woman with multiple disabilities, living at the intersectionality of it. And back then, I think 2019 was my pivot point when I realized that, okay, there is a field called accessibility, which I can actually go make a difference. And, I want to be, the accessibility person in my title. And we'll talk more about that later. But quit my job, went back to school, got my master's in human centered computing with a focus on accessibility, and never looked back. So for me, like I've really found my passion for building products and building services that we can really include everyone and really coming at it from a PM perspective, which is almost at the intersection of design technology, coordinating with whether it's design, research, engineering. How do you make sure, like in terms of the ownership, right? The entire product and the space is accessible. So I started out at Microsoft and now I'm at Cisco, and every day is fun and can't wait to share a little bit more. Thank you.
Thank you, Nandita and Tiara.
This is Tiara speaking. I'm really glad to be here with you all. A little bit about myself. I have been a state of Michigan government employee since 2009. I am currently with the Michigan Department of Civil Rights, where I have worked since around 2015. I started out there as a civil rights investigator. And basically, in that role, I investigated complaints of unlawful discrimination filed by individuals against institutions, organizations, and businesses. While I was in that role, hearing the stories daily of how people are impacted by discrimination, including disability discrimination, it really fueled me to want to continue with this work. Eventually, I was promoted to our community engagement and education division. And in that division, I was able to do outreach and education, informing individuals of their rights and also businesses of their responsibilities under the law, both state and federal law. Currently, I lead the ADA compliance unit at the Michigan Department of Civil Rights, and our primary role there is protecting and enhancing civil rights for individuals with disabilities. So I'm really excited to be here on this panel with all of you today to talk more about the importance of accessibility.
This is Kate. Thank you all so much for these lovely introductions and kind of where the spark came from for you all working in these spaces. One question for you, or next question, I should say. So this whole student academy is around how do we help students think about careers, right? Well, what they're studying, but then where might they go and what does that look like for them? And so some are new, fully new to these topics of accessibility and disability. Some might be more familiar, but we're curious to hear what's maybe one misconception you had about either an accessibility career or roles that include accessibility, and how has it changed over time? So again, kind of what is a misconception you maybe had early on around careers with accessibility or inaccessibility, and how have you seen that change? So I'll pause for a second, but I think I'm going to be partial to my fellow Michigander and go to Tiara to answer this one first if she'd like.
This is Tiara speaking. Sure thing, Kate. So I work in government. So in government, according to the ADA, any agency that has 50 or more employees is required to have at least one ADA coordinator. And so that person, their role is to make sure that the department or organization is in compliance with the ADA. So early on, I assumed that accessibility was that person's responsibility and that it was not something that I necessarily had to worry about. But I quickly learned that accessibility really, like it actually is everyone's responsibility, right? And so working in government, we are public servants, which means that we serve masses of people. And so it's not really realistic for one individual to be responsible for ensuring accessibility for every single government program, service, activity, and document that we might put out for the public. It really has to be a collective effort, and everyone really should be intentional and consider accessibility from the onset.
This is Kate. Thank you for that, Tiara. That was great. I'll leave it to Meena or Nandita if either of you would like to add on to this one. Whoever want. Okay, Nandita, I see you. Go ahead.
Happy to add on to this, and plus one to what Tiara said, right? It is everyone's responsibility. I'll actually make this personal. I'll take it back to my own misconception that I had. Um, for the longest time, I believed that if I really want to make a difference in accessibility, I need to have it in my job title. And so I feel I fought so hard to get into an dedicated accessibility role, as I call it, right? Where I'm doing it day in and day out. And I just realized, like, now that I got there, I was like, oh, first off, I'm not doing anything that much difference. Like the other misconception around accessibility roles are it's only about, compliance, or you're going to be, only auditing or doing those kind of things. And that is absolutely not true. I mean, coming from someone who's a product manager, I think now I almost look at that as I'm a PM first, but I always use my lens of accessibility. So, for any of the students and other folks here on this call, I would say, like, in terms of that misconception that you have to have accessibility in your job title, absolutely not. Plus one to what Tiara said, it's everyone's responsibility. But if anything, I've found that has been more powerful than trying to have it in your job title, because you can't be an accessibility unicorn. You can't do it all. That's not possible, right? So if there is a specific interest you do have, where you want to be a designer, you want to be a PM, or you want to be a software engineer, I would say lean into that and just pick up your lens of accessibility. And honestly, that's what Teach Access is great for, right? They're empowering you with that knowledge so you can build that lens. But don't feel like you have to go out into that industry to get that specific role. Because if anything, and this is like my personal slogan now, we need infiltrators, okay? We need more of y'all who don't have it in your job title and who just join that workforce and are just building it in. Because for me, like, I feel I'm trying to work myself out of my job. I don't want accessibility in my job title. I want everyone to have it, right? That is the gold standard. So if anything, like, just take that knowledge, apply it. I've had to learn that myself. Like, nope, don't need it in my job title. So
This is Kate. I love that. We have been saying we want a lot of advocates out there, but infiltrator might be a spicier word. So I think I like that one, Nandita. Meena, do you want to add anything to this question?
I think same as both of them said, like I totally agree. Uh, as I said in my introduction, like I graduated from college with master's, like was was also trying my best to like find an accessibility role, but could not find much. So and I started as a software engineer. I was primarily working in a front-end role. So typically when you work as a front-end software engineer, you have to deal with accessibility issues because that is how your user will interact with your software. So for me, I think that was a great way to sort of uh, get some experience with accessibility, but at the same time, I was mainly like a software engineer. So I just saw Rolando's next question in the chat, so I will try to cover that too. So if you feel underqualified or uh, unsure of how to begin, I think the best way is to just go for it. Like I know it sounds like very scary, but unless you like try to fix a bug, unless you try to read something, it's not going to make sense. Start with small small steps. Of example, me as a software engineer, we would get a lot of accessibility bugs we have to fix for our software. Then first, when you see the list, you you're just like, are these all VCAG rules? How am I gonna fix them? Just starting slowly, start with one bug, try to use a screen reader, try to use the keyboard, try to learn uh, how to navigate a computer with the keyboard. Starting these small steps will they start to build up, and you slowly increase your knowledge that way.
This is Rolando speaking, and thank you. And I like how the topics have been weaving into each other perfectly and seamlessly for this conversation, even though we didn't rehearse this, everyone. But and I think it's an overarching theme that we have seen in the academy. First, that not many of the people that have spoken here today and yesterday got into accessibility because they say, hey, I want a career in accessibility. They kind of like came to the because it was deeply personal to them, or because, like Nandita mentioned earlier, she started noticing all these barriers around her. And then it's like, I need to do something. And like Tiara mentioned, like, I need to do something. And and the title of this panel is called accessibility is everyone's job. And we got a really interesting counter take on that specific phrase, because someone that hears for the first time, accessibility is your job, everyone's job, might, become overwhelmed. It's like, how can I become an expert? So that leads me to the question, and Meena touched a little bit on this. A lot of people hold back into kind of like trying and doing that first step, as Meena encouraged, in accessibility, because they don't feel like expert, because they don't feel like they have the expertise. So what would you say to someone who wants to contribute to accessibility in general, but feels underqualified or unsure where to begin?
This is Tiara speaking. I can answer that, Rolando. That question actually deeply resonates with me. As I mentioned, when I started at the Michigan Department of Civil Rights, I was working in a completely different capacity than what I do currently. And my position was created based on a need. I would not honestly have even applied for it, like if I'm being fully transparent, because I did not feel like I was an expert. I did not feel like I had enough knowledge. I did have familiarity just based on working in the civil rights space, but I would not by any means call myself an ADA or accessibility expert. However, I ended up being placed in the position on a temporary basis before they had the opportunity to post it. And so I had to have a crash course in ADA and all things accessibility. So I think, again, this question just really resonates with me. I felt like an imposter, if I'm being honest, like when I first started. But the way to become an expert is just to continue to immerse yourself in the subject matter and learn by doing. And that's exactly what I did. And so now people come to me for questions. It's kind of unbelievable, right? Like I'm the person that all of the state departments come to ask their accessibility questions, when just a couple years ago, I didn't even think I was qualified for the position.
That is great. That is great. And I like that you mentioned imposter syndrome, because I think that's something that we can all relate to. Like at some time we felt like we've been hit by with like imposter syndrome. It's like we are not qualified, we don't know enough. And the thing is, like, this is a work that requires so many people and so many expertises and perspectives, that we all need each other, and we all have a place here in the table. And we're getting some comments in the chat from the audience about, like imposter syndrome is so real in accessibility work. Meena, Nandita, anything else that you would like to add to this question?
I think for me, this is Nandita. Plus one to again, actually, what both Meena and Tiara have said about this, plus one to the bite-sized steps that Meena mentioned. And Tiara, I'm with you. My first month or two of this role, I was like, oh my God, I'm senior. Like, are they expecting me to know everything now, right? That fear is real. I just want to acknowledge that. But I also want to bring up one point and just acknowledge that honestly, in my opinion, this is my hot take, there is no expert. Okay, we're all learning. Like, I by no means can I claim to say, yes, I'm the accessibility expert. No, I'm not. I'm learning, right? We're all learning. I think the important part is don't let the fear hold you back from making a difference, because every step you take makes a huge difference, right? You might be a emerging developer listening to this talk and you're like, oh my gosh, what can I do? Well, just go back, just start with keyboard navigation, as Meena mentioned, right? Just tap through your product and see what you find. It's the really small baby steps and acknowledging that the most important thing you're actually doing is asking those questions. Because the biggest fallacy, on the other hand, that I've seen is people are so oblivious that they don't even realize that this is a gap, right? So the fact that you are stepping in and saying, hey, is this accessible? Just throw out that question. You might not know the answer, and that's okay. But the fact that you're putting out that question is now going to challenge your team, whether it's designers, developers, PMs, to now take a step back and say, oh, what does that mean? What are the metrics we're tracking towards that? What is some user feedback we've gotten? It gets the conversation rolling. So it's that one step. Is it even accessible? Start with that and just start with the bite sized knowledge, because that is where honestly we all started. You'll make mistakes. I've made mistakes, really bad, embarrassing mistakes, by the way. Uh, but that's okay. This is a very kind community. No one is going to shame you for making those mistakes. So please don't let the fear hold you back. And I'm so thankful, honestly, all of you are here and part of this. Like, this is what we need. So thank you for that.
This is
Yeah.
Kate.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Orlando.
Oh,
I
no,
wanted
no,
to
I'm
see if
just
Meena
laughing.
wanted to add. We're both
Yeah,
talking.
yeah. But see, I'm sorry, overlap. But it's actually we make mistakes. We all make mistakes. Like things happen, and I think that you touch upon something very important, and that sometimes we're too scared or worried that we might make mistakes. And I remember reading this article about like it's okay to commit mistakes, but what is important is what you do after the mistake, how you make up for it, and how you learn from the experience. So, thank you. These are great contributions. Meena, anything else you would like to add?
Yeah, I think just one thing will add is that l- I see this a lot. I see this sometimes is that uh, people who are not disabled, they feel that they don't have the right to work in like accessibility spaces. Sometimes, but I just want to say that like we need more non-disabled people to come work in this space because I feel that disabled people face a lot of burnout to to take care of these problems by themselves. So we need more support from people uh, who are not disabled to come help us to learn about accessibility and to apply in their work. So don't feel that you're taking away space from us. If you're not disabled, we have space for everybody in this field to make a difference.
This is Kate. Meena, I love that answer. I think it kind of like Nandita said, it speaks to how welcoming doing this work can be and the kindness and grace that the community often, most of the time extends to people working on accessibility and disability. Um, so I really, really appreciate that perspective. And it's very likely that many of us will experience disability in our lifetime at some point, either personally or someone very close to us, a friend or a family member. because of how many different types of disabilities there are. It could be a permanent disability, a temporary disability. And so when you start to wrap your mind around that idea, that we know at least right now 1 in 4 people has a disability, probably higher, it becomes something like you said, it's just a shared responsibility and work for us to all be doing this, whether we identify as disabled right now or not. So I really love these answers. There was a question in the Q&A that I'd love to make sure we get to, just so we can include all of our people attending here. So the question is around time and resources. So I'll read the question here. It's, how do you get everyone on board, especially when time, resources, and knowledge are huge barriers? And this person specifically is thinking about faculty teaching in higher ed. So that's certainly one that Rolando and I have experienced, and could share some insights. But kind of broadly, would love to hear from any of you around, how do you get people on board when there's so many things pulling people's attention and resources, and so forth. So maybe I'll just see who wants to try and tackle that one first, open it up.
I mean, I can tackle. This is Nandita. I don't want to speak for a higher ed. I would rather Kate and Rolando add insights on that. But the time and resources part specifically, and even the knowledge. I mean, I can speak from it from corporate experience with what I've experienced. Um, PMing for me, honestly, it's always a game. It's always a game and gamble of prioritization, and that changes from month to month. So, honestly, the lack of time, resources, and knowledge, like I totally feel you. I feel I definitely experienced that. But I think to me, something that has helped is understanding, at least again, from an industry perspective, the business value and tying it back to that. And actually, even doing a time study. So, for example, with one of my teams, and this was when I was in a non accessibility role, so didn't have accessibility in my title, just a very own PM. One of the things that I was trying to do was with my team, like, well, how do we get them to bake in accessibility as part of in sprint testing? Because earlier the mindset used to be, oh, I'll wait for my audit at the end of the year and then I'll just take care of those bugs and be done with it. Reality is, when we actually looked at the data and we realized that 40-50% of the issues were the same issues that were happening year after year for the last 4 years. So we were making the same issues for the last 4 years and then spending twice or thrice the amount of time fixing those bugs on the back end. So when we looked at that data and we were like, okay, for example, this is a really simple example, but you're building a table, right? And you have a table header. And every time you're forgetting to add a table header and then you're getting dinged on that in the audit, why don't you just put that in the requirements? So when you build a new table, you're always going to add a table header, right? 10% of issues gone. Boom. So that's just one example. But to be able to like look at your data and making that case that in terms of time resources, you're actually saving time and you're saving resources by doing these XYZ things up front. This changes from organization to organization. I'm sure it'll be different with higher ed. So you'll have to see where that is. But telling your story with data can be really helpful, because don't assume everyone's gonna, just do accessibility from the goodness of their heart. That is an ideal world. I wish that happened. But not everyone's motivated the same way. So figure out what's gonna help pull those strings and then present that data and then get them to do it. But over to you and Kate and Rolando from a higher ed perspective.
Neither of us want to touch it. No, I'm just kidding. This is Kate. Oh, well, it's also how much time do we have? I feel like probably it's similar to industry, and maybe even Tiara, I'd love to hear what you think about being in the public sector, but um, it's always a question of how to make, I love your answer, Nandita, about what are the priorities of the organization that you're within? Um, how could I try and map onto some of those using the data that's available to me? But something that Rolando and I talk about a lot with faculty when we work with them is to start small. Um, because you are all busy people, there's a lot going on. So, if we approach a faculty member either about making their materials accessible, so things like make sure that there's captions added to your lecture videos, or you've added alt text to your slide decks, the things that actually make the content accessible. But we also talk to faculty about how do you teach these topics in your curriculum. So actually thinking about what are you teaching in a course, what can you be teaching to your students about this. There's a lot. Like we said, no one can be an expert in this. There's just so much. And so we really encourage faculty to look at what do they have and what's one thing they could do for this next semester or this next quarter. Do that one thing, start there. And then that becomes kind of like you were saying, Nandita. Now table headers are always included. Well, now I always run my syllabus through the accessibility checker. Don't even think about it. It's part of my process. Next semester, maybe I'll make sure that I look at alt text for each of my slide decks. So it's really trying to understand that you're not going to be able to do it all at once, but take a small step in some way. So we could say a lot more about it, but I'll leave it at that and see, Tiara, yeah, anything you have.
Yes, this is Tiara speaking. I love all of what both of you said, and I absolutely agree with Nandita that you do save time in the long run when you start with accessibility in mind. From a data perspective, here in Michigan, I think it was 2020 census report says that we have over 10 million residents here in Michigan. And then we also have CDC data that says 2.5 million adults have some sort of disability here in Michigan. And when you look at the numbers, that's almost 1/4 of the population. And again, that's only adults, right? So from that perspective, as a public servant, if you are a public institution, right? You enroll students that are members of the public, you're likely going to encounter someone who has a disability. And so at some point, the ADA requires that we make reasonable modifications, right, to programs, services, activities. You may have to do it at some point. So doing it from the beginning definitely is going to save time.
This is Rolando speaking, and I think it ties to another thing. Is like, don't reinvent the wheel. Like Nandita pointed out earlier, and Meena has also shared earlier. This is a very collaborative community, and there are many experts. There are many people out there that have created resources that we can plug in and share, and that we can amplify instead of like, why create 20 manuals on doing alt text? These are really good resources on how to do alt text, right? And these types of resources, and going to Nandita's comment about the gap, it's like, where's the gap? And that's where I start building the resources that I need. And it also ties to kind of like building templates. Start small and build templates and use what's been and connect with the broader community. And it perfectly ties to our last question, and then we'll do the one in the chat about starting small. So what's one habit or mindset you'd recommend students, even like faculty and practitioners that we have in the room, you'd recommend them to build now that will make them stronger accessibility advocates later?
This is Tiara. I can take that. I would say don't be afraid to be an ambassador. If you have access in a space that someone else doesn't, don't be afraid to use your voice on their behalf. And I can give an example of that. So say you are part of a student organization on a college campus and your organization wants to recruit new members. You decide to host an informational meeting, but the informational meeting is being held on the second floor of a building that you can only access using a stairwell. If you are starting with accessibility in mind and being an ambassador, you can speak up and say, how about we host this meeting in a more accessible location? Another example regarding digital accessibility, maybe you're promoting the informational meeting with a flyer or on a web page. You want to make sure that flyer or social media post, whatever it is accessible to anybody who may want to access and come to the meeting.
Yeah, Meena, I think you want to add something to that.
Sure. I think one practical tip that I would like to share is that try your best to use uh, generative AI to learn more about accessibility, because I feel that, especially in the software industry, uh, uh, AI is being used like almost every day to write code and to learn new things. It is true that AI will not always give you the right solutions to, say, fix an accessibility issue, but uh, it is becoming really good. So if you want to keep up with the new advancements, what are happening, how accessibility powered with AI is getting better, try to use those technologies to learn better. For example, just like 2 weeks back, I was like trying to fix a bug that we had for accessibility. And I just joined like a new team. Like I just joined GitHub 2 months back. So I am still trying to learn how the code is. I don't know where everything is. And I just asked Copilot, hey, like, can you explain me where do I make this change? What is this piece of code doing? And it was very good to like, uh, uh, and it saved me so much time to do it by myself. So yeah, just say that don't feel scared to use AI. Yes, you do need to validate that what it's doing, it's right, but I feel that uh, accessibility powered with AI, it's like just going to get better. There's a lot of work being done, so don't feel scared to use those resources to make yourself more productive.
This is Kate. I think Rolando might have frozen. Oh, is he here?
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, can you hear? Okay, are you back?
Yeah, it's okay. Thank you very much. I'll hand it over to Kate because I think my connection is a bit.
Yeah, no problem. I realize we are approaching the hour. There is a question in the chat or in the Q&A that we probably don't have time to get into, but it was a question around kind of how outward facing efforts for accessibility can reflect what's happening internally, is how we've interpreted that one. So um, there's probably not time for it, but I think if anyone has any insights they want to share with that, please do. Um, but yeah, I'll pause for a second and see if anyone has any answers to that one. Okay, maybe we've stumped everyone. So, yeah, the idea was around maybe I'm looking at some clarification here, how we can facilitate the transfer of skills and applications to employees. So, I do think we have to pause there. I'm sorry to the person who asked the question, but part of trying to transfer those skills is things like this, right? So attending sessions where you can get them. There are many sort of free or very low cost places for training and information to try and get some of those skills going. There were some earlier sessions around culture and really thinking about the culture of an organization. So I think that's part of this conversation, which is where there's a lot to say about this question. But the work continues, I think, is the takeaway there. But I know we're 1 minute over here. I want to thank all of you so much for joining us for this last session of the 2026 Student Academy. Um, Really amazing. I also want to give a huge thank you to Rolando specifically. He has put together a phenomenal program this year. So a big thank you to all the work he's put in. A thank you to the planning committee and to our sponsors, particularly Microsoft, our presenting sponsor, as well as the others. And a thank you to all of you for spending your time with us, whether you've been part of these live sessions or have joined virtually later through the recordings. We're really glad you spent time with us. And we hope you'll stay connected to the work that we're doing and the others that you've heard from through this academy. So I'd love to see, Rolando, any final thoughts before you close it out?
Just gratitude for everyone that joined us and attended either one of these days, and a couple of people that I seen have joined both days, and also to all the wonderful speakers that we had over these 2 days, and that we have say, we expect to see you next year and join us for the next T-Tech, the Student Academy. So thank you, everybody. We're grateful to have you here.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.